Hello everybody, JenniferMaker here. It's a beautiful day to make some new friends and learn more about working with cardstock. Today I'll share how to make these adorable layered shadow box designs with gnomes. Each one has a festive theme and I'll show you how to cut and secure all of these fun layers, even one that's not paper. Have you wandered the craft aisle at a store or maybe clicked around a lot online admiring all the fancy cardstocks and materials out there? I sure have, and I have absolutely fallen in love with a new kind of cardstock, brought it home to my cutting machine, and then froze up. Because you don't want to risk messing up your pretty paper, right? I totally get it, especially with shadow boxes where paper is the star of the show. Or maybe you got the cutting just perfect and then it looks all weird assembled. Have you noticed this? Sometimes it happens. So while it seems like cardstocks and papers should all work the same, they really don't. So I'm going to show you how to pick the right paper for your layers, how to cut them without stress, and which adhesives will help you get the look that you love. You can make your own to fit right in these 8-inch square shadow box frames if you'd like, or get creative. All right, for this project, we're going to start simple with this guy who looks perfectly handsome in plain cardstock. But remember, I always recommend high quality cardstock. If you can get it, it really makes a difference in cutting. Then I'll show you how to use special materials to make his friends. We'll use foil, holographic, and glitter cardstocks, which are heavier than the plain kind, and then some really pretty paper that needs a little extra care, and even a surprise material to make a snow globe. I'll use a Cricut Maker 3 cutting machine to cut everything, but you can also use an original maker, any Explorer series machine, a Venture, a Cricut Joy Extra, or another cutting machine that uses SVG or DXF cut files. Now these gnomes are a little too detailed to cut down or to size down for an original Joy though, so keep that in mind. You can find links to everything that I'm using at JenniferMaker.com/549 plus written directions if you prefer. Then I'll explain which adhesives I prefer for each material, including glue and adhesive foam pieces. They both have their places in these designs. Follow along to see how they all come together, and then you can decide which papers to use in your shadow boxes without doing all of the testing. Remember, I make the mistakes so you don't have to. So first, let me show you where to get the free gnome shadow box designs. Step 1, get my layered gnome designs. First, download my designs at JenniferMaker.com/549. You can either download right from that link by saving the project, or download from my entire free design collection. To find it, look for libraries in the red bar at the top, and then click either get a password if you don't yet have one, or click enter the library. Search the page for design number 549 and click the link to download the designs. You can cut the layers of paper by hand, but it's easier with a cutting machine like a Cricut. I'll use a Cricut Maker 3 in this video, but you can use any cutting machine that accepts SVG cut files. If you're not sure how to upload, go to JenniferMaker.com/SVGS to learn how to unzip and upload SVG files. There are 4 designs with fun beards and details. One with birds, another with lights, a pine tree beard, and a snow globe. I'll show you how to prepare and make the gnome with birds using plain cardstock. Then I'll show you some highlights of how to make the other 3 with different materials. Step 2, prepare and cut your cardstock design. Here's how the gnome with birds SVG looks like on my canvas in Cricut Design Space. It's sized to fit the 8-inch square shadow box in my materials list, but it's always a good idea to check your frame's dimensions. Remove any packaging and then open the back. Use a ruler to measure the open area where the layers will go. If your frame has protective film like mine does, peel off as much as you can. A weeding tool helps, just be careful not to scratch anything. Some of the plastic was stubborn, so I used the tool to poke it into the frame itself. No one will know it's there. Then clean it with a lint-free cloth and some rubbing alcohol. Back in Cricut Design Space, keep the lock icon closed and change the dimensions if you need to. I'm making this design with plain cardstock, so that's all there is to do. Make sure the correct machine is selected and then click Make It. On the Prepare screen, adjust the material size for all the mats to match your paper choices. The numbers at the bottom of most layers will help with the layering. Don't worry, they'll be hidden. Select the first mat and click Continue. Not all machines cut the exact same way, but I got the best results for this 65-pound cardstock using the light cardstock setting with default pressure. If all your mats use the same setting, click the Remember Material box to save yourself some time. Place your first color of cardstock face up on a green standard grip machine mat, and then use a brayer to make sure it's adhered really well. Load the mat into your Cricut, and make sure your fine point blade is clean and in the clamp too. Press the flashing button to start the cut, and there it goes. When it's all done, don't unload it right away. Instead, gently lift the cardstock to make sure the cuts go all the way through. If they don't, press the cut button again to run the operation in the exact same spot. When everything looks good, unload the mat. And then flip the mat over onto your work surface and gently roll the mat back to release the cardstock. More delicate layers might not come off easily, and if that happens, just slide a spatula under them to help it and then avoid tearing it. Now set your layer aside face up and in the correct orientation to save yourself some time later. A scraper helps remove any cutouts left on the mat that can interfere with the next layer, like the numbers. Use the same process to prepare, cut, and finish your other mats. Step 3. Assemble your Gnome shadow box. The designs go together the same way using adhesive foam dots of different sizes and some craft glue. You'll want to have your weeding tool as well. First, use the numbers to stack the layers face up in the correct order. The top piece doesn't have a number since that would be visible. Here are all of my cut pieces face up and in the right orientation. The shadow box frame helps with alignment, so have that open and face down too. Flip over layer 8, the background, so it's face up and put it in the frame. Add adhesive foam squares to the back of layer 7. You can use tweezers or your weeding tool to remove the protective papers. Now flip layer 7 over and line it up on layer 8, then press it in place. The rest of the layers all get attached the same way. Since all the layers are the same cardstock in this version, I recommend using adhesive foam pieces between them all. Make sure you get a few pieces around the sides, but stagger them to make the result even. Add them to any larger design areas in the middle too. And remember to use the frame's edges to keep everything lined up. Use foam to add the last full layer and you're almost done. Finally, add small foam pieces to the birds' backs and press them into place. Then use a little good quality paper glue to add the nose. There's your gnome and birds. But they're backwards in the frame, so gently flip it over to pop out the project. Use your weeding tool to loosen it if needed, and then put it back in face down. Look where the back layer meets the frame side. If there's a gap between the cardstock and where the frame's backer will sit, the layers could move around during handling. A rectangular scrap of cardstock will help here. Fold it into thirds to make a rough triangle. Then add some glue to the middle section and press it onto the back layer. Let it dry and then add the backer with any hanging hardware oriented correctly. The triangle will take up the open space and push the layers snug against the glass. Light gnome with a special cardstock. There are so many pretty cardstocks available, you can definitely try them out. Let's make the gnome with lights using glitter, foil, and holographic cardstock, plus a little plain cardstock for the nose. The gnome with lights looks great with foil cardstock and a holographic background. There are just a few adjustments to make along the way. Use Cricut Design Space to prepare the SVG the same way as we did for the gnome with birds. And when you're ready to cut, click Make It. On the Prepare screen, adjust the material sizes to match your cardstock for each color. Select the first mat and click Continue. Set each mat for the type of cardstock you're using. For the white glitter cardstock, I use glitter cardstock with default pressure on a green standard grip mat. Cut your first mat, making sure the cuts go all the way through. Then remove the pieces and keep them in the correct orientation. When you're ready for the next mat, use a scraper to remove any excess glitter left behind. Glitter can also stick to the blade and cause trouble. So open the clamp and remove the blade housing. And then press the plunger on the blade housing to make the blade poke out a little bit at the bottom. Ball up a piece of aluminum foil. Now carefully poke the blade into the aluminum foil ball several times to knock off any glittery bits. Then release the plunger and put the housing back into the clamp. Do this after each piece of glitter cardstock to save yourself a lot of time and avoid jumpy cuts. Cut each mat and set your pieces aside in the correct orientation. For the holographic background and the foil cardstock mats, I used foil craft board with more pressure on a green standard grip mat. Next, arrange the layers face up in the correct order using the numbers to help. Turn the project over and then flip the top layer, that's layer 9, face up and put it in the frame. And just like the simple project, use adhesive foam squares to assemble layers 8, 7, 6, and 5 in the frame. Use the lights on layer 5 to help you position the nose and glue it in place. Now add thin lines of craft glue around the edges of layer 4 and along the wire. Glue keeps the layers closer together than the foam, so the strings of lights look like they're a single object. Use glue for layers 3, 2, and 1 also. If there's any glue coming out the edges, carefully wipe it away. For the top, use adhesive foam squares and make sure the berry shapes align before pressing it in place. Now finish it up the same way as the first shadow box. I'll show you the results at the end. Tree with mixed paper thicknesses. Of course, you don't have to stick to thick cardstock. There are lots of pretty pattern papers out there that make great backgrounds or design elements. I fell in love with this pack that looks like Christmas wrapping paper. But it's barely thicker than gift wrapping paper, so I had to do some testing. I found that it's best to use for plain layers or ones with simple cuts. It doesn't really handle intricate cuts very well and it will tear. So to do this, prepare the SVG in Cricut Design Space like the others so it will fit your shadow box. Even with simple cuts and the perfect techniques, this paper probably will curl a bit. Plus, you can kind of see the foam spacer shapes if you use those. But you can fix both those issues by planning your layers ahead of time to put this thin stuff between sturdy, untextured materials like foil or holographic cardstock. So for this design, I'll use the pattern paper for the teal hat layer. You can adjust the layers' colors as you like, but if you want to keep the tree beard look, keep layers 2, 4, 6, and 8 green. Use a different color for layer 8 because plain cardstock works for it. The colors in between will just show through the little ornament holes, so keep them simple. I'll use plain cardstock for those since it's thinner than the foil and won't make the layers bulky. So here are the papers I'll use for my layers. Once you decide, keep track of which paper you'll use for which layer. When you get to the cutting screen, I use the same material settings as before with the plain, foil, and holographic cardstocks. But now we have the thin pattern paper to deal with. After lots of testing, I had the best results using the wrapping paper setting with default pressure. I also prepared the pattern paper face up on a blue light grip mat because a really sticky mat is just too much for this stuff. After you've cut and uploaded the paper's mat, flip the mat over and roll it back just like I've always taught you to do. The thin paper should start to come off the mat, but it's easy to curl or rip. So use a spatula to help lift the edges and then gently lift toward the center. Once everything is cut, arrange the layers face up in the correct order. Flip the layers over and then place the background face up in the frame just like the other projects. Use foam pieces to add layers 9, 8, and 7. Layer 8 is plain cardstock, but since it's a big background piece, the foam will work well and create the depth we want. Since layer 6 is plain cardstock, I recommend you use thin lines of glue instead of foam. Don't let it get too close to the holes either. Add layer 5 on top of layer 6 with foam. Then glue layer 4 on top of layer 5. Add layer 3 on top of layer 4 with foam, using smaller pieces on the beard. Glue layer 2 on top of layer 3. Layer 1 is the delicate patterned paper. Add thin lines of craft glue on the back. Flip it over and line it up on layer 2 and press it in place. Smooth it out as much as you can and wipe away any extra glue. Add the top layer with foam and then glue the nose in place. You're done, and I'll share my results of this one at the end. Gnome Snow Globe with acetate. Prepare the SVG in Cricut Design Space like the others so it will fit your shadow box. Layer 1B is the optional acetate layer, which a Maker or Maker 3 can cut. If you don't want to use that material, just use the eye icon to hide it. But I'm keeping it. I'm going to cut the sky and hat layers using patterned paper, but you can mix and match materials as you like. When you get to the cutting screen, I use the same material settings as before, but now we have the acetate to deal with. Mine cut well on the acetate setting with default pressure, but remember that all machines cut a little differently. If your acetate has protective film, peel off one side. Secure it with the protected side down on a green standard grip mat, and you're ready to cut. Now prepare, cut, and orient all your pieces using the same steps as the previous projects. The glass of a shadow box frame can interfere with the acetate look, so I'll display this one on an easel instead. Flip the layers over and then put the background face up. Since the next layer is paper, add thin lines of glue, avoiding the little holes at the bottom. Flip layer 7 over and line it up on layer 8 and press in place. Take your time aligning the edges since we don't have the frame sides to help out. Smooth it out as best you can with a brayer. Add layer 6 with glue too. Then add layers 5, 4, 3, and 2 with foam. When you get to layer 1B, the acetate, peel off any remaining protective film. Then use glue to add it to the project. Don't let it spread into the snow globe area because it will be visible and ruin the clarity. If it gets in the way, let the glue dry and gently peel it off. Add layer 1 with glue to outline the snow globe's orb. Again, don't let the glue get into the center clear area. Finally, add the top layer with foam and glue the nose in place. Step 4, show it off. Here is how my layered bearded gnomes look, all ready for winter. Didn't these turn out really cool? I just love them. So that's how these special guys go together. Not so bad, right? Overall, my biggest tip is to think through your layers and paper choices ahead of time. For example, remember that thin pattern paper won't work well on intricate layers. It's just too likely to tear and you won't see enough of the pattern anyway. Also, put it in front of a sturdy, smooth layer and use glue to secure them together. Foam spacers will make the thin paper wavy, and we don't want that. And if you have some paper that tears or you just don't like your first try, it's okay. Just take a breath, decide what you do want and what you can do differently next time, and then just try again. Check your cut settings, go slower removing pieces from your mat, or maybe try an entirely different paper. There are a lot of variables in paper crafting, but I am confident you can do this and so much more. Speaking of much more, I have other paper and holiday projects in my annual countdown to Christmas, the Merry Maker Mingle. Sign up free at merrymakermingle.com for totally free projects, tutorials, designs, and all of the details you need to craft a beautiful Christmas this year. There is so much to learn about paper crafting, I know. So if this got you excited to learn more, come check out my Cricut Crafters and Makers Facebook group at JenniferMaker.com/CricutCrafters. And that's it for today. Until tomorrow, this is Jennifer Maker reminding you to craft a life you love.